First upon, good afternoon to all. Today, welcome to this today's guest lecture on writing, research, articles, and paper publications. Today, our fortune that we have our guest today, Dr. Jadhav sir, with us. Very eminent personality is with us. Fortune. Going to start the today's session. I would like to Dr. H.T.Jadhav sir. Sir has completed his graduation in electrical engineering, Karad in 1995. Then completed his M.Tech in electrical power systems from Kalchan College of Engineering, Sangli, 2003. Then completed his PhD in electrical IIT Surat. His research area was economic dispatch for power plants and optimal power flow power systems. Sir is having more than 26 years of teaching experience. He worked as a head of the department for more than 10 years. Also worked as an associate professor for 5 years, and he also works in the several institutes in the Sangli district. Then he is a government certified energy auditor also, and he received the 14th state level award for excellence in energy conservation and management by Maharashtra Energy Development Agency, and also secured the first prize. Then Sir has completed several sponsored projects and also did R&D jointly with the IIT Bombay and GC, the Government College of Engineering, Raipur. Sir has also filed one patent in energy monitoring and dynamic power flow control. Sir is also worked as a BOS in the university. He's also worked as a reviewer for the international journals. Sir has also published papers, 11 papers in highly reputed international journals, and he has 40 plus conference papers in IEEE. He also developed some courses for e-learning and citations for papers more than 700. Okay, and his H index is 10. So, a very impressive profile sir has developed. So, without taking much time, I request Dr. H.T. Jadhav sir proceed this session and guide the students.
Thank you, Professor Kosti. Please confirm that my voice is clear.
Yes, sir, it is clear, audible.
I think you need to give me right as a presenter.
Yes, yes. Yes, sir, I marked you as a presenter.
Okay. I think
Yes.
now you can see my screen, right? Just please confirm if you can see the screen.
Yes, yes. Screen is visible, sir.
Okay, fine. Okay, so great. Thank you. Good afternoon to all. Professor Kosti, I assume that most of the participants are from MTech, right?
Yes, yes. Few
And
faculty are also there and some PhD students are also
okay, fine. So good, we have good crowd. I can see around 12 attendees are there.
there. Many more may
Fine.
also join.
Okay, fine. So let's continue. Actually, the topic was all about writing research articles. So I have an assumption Um certain assumptions like all the participants are working. By the way, the second year students are from first year or second year?
Both from first year also and second year also.
Okay, fine, no issue. Generally, these kind of presentations about writing research article are more relevant to those who have been there and who have done some enough research, and then they are ready to say compile, compose the article to be submitted to some good journal. So I have that assumption that you at least you have started working in the field of your area of your interest. And one more assumption, let me declare here upfront that most of you have done research methodology course. And there are some PhD candidates, so no worries because they are there in the research phase and probably they must have communicated some articles also. So doctorate candidates might be very much aware of writing research article and all those things. So it may be the case that the doctorate candidates may find the things, I mean, some kind of repetition. So, nevertheless, this presentation should help to all the participants. And I have request to senior members also, if at all possible, the members can contribute in order to improve the quality of this presentation as well. So, the outline of the presentation is like this, and these items, what you see on the screen, are relevant to typical research article. I mean to say that any research article will have these components like abstract, introduction, methodology section, result and discussion section, conclusion and future scope, and references. So I will have my presentation around these points only, because these points or these headings constitute or represents a typical research article. So research paper, before I get into different components of research article, such as abstract to references, I will have few slides in the beginning to set some kind of motivation or some kind of ground for the audience. So any research article, probably first year or second year MTech or doctorate people must have read research articles published in a referred journal. I am referring to a standard journals, and we will see later on what is mean by standard journals from my perspective. So these are the 6 questions. If you can answer, then probably you have written a research article. So first 2 questions represents introduction section of a typical research article. And these 2 questions are, why this research question exists? I mean, the research article is all about answering to some research question. So if you have the first question answered, that is why this research question exists in the first place, and subsequently how this research question, I mean, what is the research question? If these 2 questions are answered in the beginning, then you have in fact written introduction section of your research article. But the sequence has to be followed. Like first you answer the question why this research question exists in the first place. That means justification as to why this research has been done. And second question is, what is the research question? What exactly is your research question? If you can answer, then together you have written introduction section. See, I'll talk about abstract in the later part. Third question is, how did you answer the research question? So if you answer this question in your research article, then you have created a methodology section of your research article. Fourth question is, what did you find that represents the results of your research? How is it different or better than others? If you answer this question, then essentially you have written a discussion section of your research article. And finally, if you can answer this question, what is your final opinion about the research, what or about your research findings, then you have answered the conclusion section of your research article. So these are 6 questions to be answered while you write a research paper. Professor Amol, is that fine?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in between, I'll be asking you if,
Yes, sir.
because I don't see the people, and therefore sometimes I need some kind of feedbacks also in between. Okay, so one more thing before we jump into our main topic, that what makes a research paper very effective. So in order to ensure that your research paper is very effective, it should have one of the two things. What are the two things which one should have in the research paper? One is, your research question should be very interesting. So you have to either make sure that your research question is very interesting. If not, in the sense, if that research question has been already presented in several research articles earlier, in that case, you must have very compelling answer. So these are two important things you should keep in mind while you decide to write a research article. Either you should have interesting research question, or you should have very compelling answer to the existing research question. See, something which we need to remember while we start writing our research paper is about preparation of some kind of say blueprint of our paper. This slide says that if a construction worker starts putting the bricks to construct the house with some image about it, I mean, there is no any kind of, say, a civil engineering person can understand better that before construction of any infrastructure, generally a drawing sheet is prepared, that how this structure will look like from the front, top, and something like that. Sometimes even perspective view is also prepared before before starting the construction work. These steps like preparing drawing or perspective and all those things, these are extra steps, but we need, otherwise we may end up with wrong construction. So the same logic applies while we write a research paper. We need to prepare some kind of rough skeleton about the research paper which we intend to write, because around this skeleton we have to construct, or we have to write our research paper, and that may be more effective. So this step may be extra, but it will help produce a very good research article. So that is what I said, same logic applies here. One more strategy which I suggest to beginners is that always have an habit of writing and editing later. So write something, then edit, write, edit, instead of just looking at the screen doing nothing. Because if we set very high bar in the beginning itself, then what happens sometimes is we fail to write anything. We just stare at the screen, and then uh, you know sometimes we don't even start. So that approach is not good according to me. The best approach, as I said, is just write and edit, and then gradually we can have some very good draft created. So while you start writing your research paper, probably you will realize that writing and editing is the best strategy to design a very good paper. Sometimes what happens, you have written, however, in the editing process, you may completely replace entire paper which you started. But then the second version, you will notice that is better than the first version. So these are some of the points the researchers need to remember while writing research paper. Okay, so having said all these things, now it's time to get into the main part of our presentation, that is all about writing a research paper. What are the tools? What is journal, conference, and something similar to that? What I will be talking to you. So the first item or first component of a research paper is an abstract. Sometimes people write abstract after writing entire paper, but not necessarily. Even you can write abstract in the beginning if you are fully aware of your research work. So you can use any strategy. You can start from introduction section, finish the paper, and then you can work on abstract portion of your research paper. Secondly, see, abstract is generally free. I mean, I'm talking about some refereed journals, and these journals, I mean, if you visit to the websites of these journals, you will notice that abstract is freely available. It is just like a trailer of a movie where you decide whether the paper is to be read or not. Mostly, as you have been doing this same activity for last 1 year or many years, that we, while referring the articles or literature, we just go through abstract section first, and then we take a call if the entire paper is to be read or it is to be skipped. And therefore, in order to compel the readers, we must ensure that abstract is also very appealing, and it should be a self-contained small research paper. So how to write an abstract? So abstract is essentially a small document, 1 page or half-page document, and that generally consists of, or that is designed by using 200 to 400 words. Here, very important suggestion is that before you start writing abstract, you need to identify journal. It's very important. You should be knowing that which journal you are targeting. Having identified the journal, you have to, or after having identified the journal, you need to go through a section of the journal called author's guideline or guidelines to the author. That section you can see on the website of a particular journal. So that particular section, that is guidelines to authors, should help you prepare this section. Why? Because the abstract section is or generally abstract section consists of some limited words. Suppose that journal is asking about abstract with only 200 words, and if you have used 400 words, then you have to again rework on the abstract portion. So best strategy is to know how many or maximum number of words are applicable to that journal, and accordingly you can design your abstract portion. So what is abstract? So abstract is essentially answering these questions like why this research exists, what is exactly this research, how did you do this research, what are your findings, and so on. If you answer these questions, you have written abstract. So it is a concise summary, small summary of an entire paper to be written using 200 to 400 words. And we will see that what are the different components of the abstract line by line. So these are some of the components what you see on your screen. For example, the first two sentences. See, the first two sentences of abstract should set a strong motivation for the reader. So what you have to do, one sentence you have to write about what is known prior to publication. What it means is you have to write some few two lines where the first line may represent a background. What is the background behind this research and what is known so far? What knowledge already exists and what you are going to feel? I mean, what gap you are going to feel? So first two lines in short represents background of your research work and what is known so far and what your research paper is going to add something new. So what gap you are going to address. So these things you have to write in the first two lines of an abstract. See, this is going to set some motivation among the reader. They will know that what is the background and what is going to happen next. Do not add any citations. Do not do any copy paste. All these are some instructions. See, next two sentences, that is sentence third and fourth, you have to state your research problem. So having said earlier or having mentioned about the background of the research paper and what is known so far, it's time to include your research statement, your research problem. So you have to state what is not studied in one line maybe, and then you have to state what you propose, what is something new which you are going to talk about in this paper. So your research hypothesis, your research problem, you need to state using one or two lines. Okay. Use 1 to 2 sentences to define your research paper, which research problem which you are going to solve. That is to be included after these first two sentences. See, I am saying that first two sentences. I do not mean that you must use 2 sentences. You may have 3 sentences. Here, third and fourth. I do not mean that strictly you should use third and fourth statement with this content. You may take even third, fourth, and fifth statement like that. Okay. Or sentence. Now, next two lines. So you said what was known earlier, what you are going to do, and how you are going to do. That is a methodology, your approach, your strategy. So whatever the strategy or approach you have used in your research, that has to be stated, mentioned next using 2 to 3 lines. Also include the scope of the study. And as I said, 1 or 2 sentences should do the job. Okay, generally 2 sentences are needed. So here you have mentioned the methodology, and even I have not mentioned here. Yeah, it's there now. So sentence number 7 and 9. Professor Amol, is that good going?
Yes, sir. Good,
Okay,
sir.
fine. So see the last 2 sentences, 7, 8, 9, whatever, 2 to 3 sentences, you have to talk about results. Now, you should not write about your results in detail. Maybe typical or important findings you need to write here after you mentioned the methodology part. And for that, you need to use only 2 sentences, not more than that. Okay. Specific relations, whatever. See, it may be evaluated data. It may represent specific relations that were found should be mentioned here. So result is all about some kind of findings after doing research which you have are to be mentioned here. And of course, after having presented results, you can add one line which represents the conclusion. I have not written here, but remember, one line conclusion should also be added here. So such a 10 sentences, 10 to 12 sentences should help you construct the abstract portion of the research article. So this is the strategy you can always use. I think you are clear about how to configure abstract section. And if at all you have some doubt, you can keep your questions ready, which we will take up at the end of the session. And in between also, if you realize that you are not getting connected properly or you have some concerns, you can always interrupt me and ask me a question about it. So we have done with the abstract section. Introduction section is very important now. It is generally a first section. It is the first section of the paper. If I assume that abstract section is external to the paper. So the first section is an introduction section. See, generally, I suggest that the researchers should break down this introduction section into 4 parts. This may not be the practice in all the research articles, but if you follow this strategy, probably you will appeal to your editor in a much better manner. So what are the 4 important components of introduction sections? So these are the 4. The 1.1, section 1.1 should be a research motivation section. Just straight away write research motivation. This is section number 1.1. Then 1.2 is a literature review. 1.3 is a research gaps. And 1.4 is about research contribution. Let's see what we expect here or what is expected by the editors. Research motivation. So provide background information and set the context. See, this is same as what you have written here, first 2 sentences. But remember, you are not supposed to copy these sentences and paste here. So while you start this section research motivation, use some different language, but that will represent some background about your research. And that will set some motivation. Having done this, that having written 1 paragraph about the background of your research, remember in this case, you have used 1 or 2 sentences only to mention about the research background. While here you have to use 1 paragraph, maybe 5 to 6 lines, in which you will be talking about or you will be justifying that why the research is necessary in this area. So some people call it as setting a background, some people call it as a relevance, some people call it as motivation, research motivation, and so on. And that will set the context of the paper. Secondly, introduce a topic, a specific topic of your research. So here, first paragraph will be very broader, but gradually in the second paragraph, you will narrow down to a specific research topic which is relevant to your research. Okay. And you will also explain in the first paragraph itself that why this research, why there is a need of research in this area. So this part will set a motivation for editor, reviewers, and readers. Okay. Then 1.2. So 1.2, see, gradually you will get into literature now. What has been done so far? Mention about the past attempts done to solve the research problem. See, here you have gradually introduced a specific research area. Okay. And then literature review will talk about what has been done so far in this area. So literature review is a paragraph, and that paragraph itself represents small review paper. Okay, some people, what they do is they prepare a review paper first, and later on the same review paper is compressed in this section, and a second paper is produced based on the technical findings. So this is also a good idea. If you are a beginner, you can think of first writing a review paper, communicate it to the journal, and continue to work on a research problem. And in that case, if you get good answers, you can use the first paper to construct the literature review section of the second paper. Fine. After having written the literature review portion, the next is writing research gaps. This is very important. See, if you write research gaps, probably 90% of your paper gets accepted. Because if you know the research gaps, it means that the reviewer and other, I mean, editor will be sure that you have done enough literature review, and now you know the gaps, and these gaps you are going to bridge. So research gap is a separate section, and you should write it. Okay, that's very important. And in these cases, you have to cite the papers, research papers. Needless to mention, you should be. After having written or say prepared these sections, the last section is research contribution. See, this is what is going to be very important in the sense that your reviewer will know what is the contribution, and you should have a reasonable contribution. Remember, if you are planning to submit your paper in a good journal, so what is the characteristic of good journal? The good journal is a kind of journal. Of course, we will see later on H index and then impact factor and all those things in later part. But meanwhile, good journal is a journal which expect that a research paper should have enough volume and good quality. So you should be able to prepare your research paper with using at least 8 to 10 pages. Your research paper should not be of just 2-page document. In that case, you have to communicate it to the laters, some other category. So we'll not talk about how to write letters and other short communications. I'm talking about typical research article. So typical research article should consist of 10 to 15 pages. That means it should have sufficient research work. And secondly, it should have quality also. So the quality and quantity both matters in the case of good quality research papers. So research contribution has to be uh, highlight, and I suggest that use bullet three to four bulleted statements to mention about your contribution in this research paper. So these are the 4 points you should be using uh, while you write your research paper. See why these 4 points important, because when you submit your research paper, it goes to editor. Probably you must be knowing that there are many people involved in the beginning. One is editor, or sometimes we call it as associate editor or editorial office or something like that. And these people might not be knowing your research area in detail or your research work in detail, but then they'll be knowing little about what you have mentioned in your research paper. And what they do, they generally read introduction section in detail to decide whether your research paper is good for that journal, whether your research paper should be transferred to review process or not. That is decided by editor. So you have to sell your research paper to the editor in the beginning. Sell, I mean to say that you have to convince the editor that your paper is uh, is good enough that it should be given an opportunity for review process. At least a review need or may be conducted. That confidence the editor should get. So you have to say convince this way. Fine. So literature review. So literature review is all about mentioning what people have done and where are the gaps, right? I think I have not mentioned details about literature review, but the review section can be configured in a number of ways. One approach is what you can do is you can have some kind of classification of earlier papers. Suppose you have you downloaded, or you have got 50 papers downloaded, or they are relevant to your research. You read these 50 papers, and then based on the gaps, you did a research. That is what is the line of your action. So now you have to mention about these 50 papers, and in what way you can do. The one way is to classify these 50 papers into groups. Maybe you can have two groups, then again these two groups will have two more groups, like that. So these kind of small classification you have to carry out. That means you are grouping these 50 papers into some small subgroups, and these subgroups contains relevant papers. And in literature review, what you can do is you can compare these groups or papers in the same group, like that. That that represents that you have done enough homework to identify the gaps. So such a literature review is called thematic literature review, where all the papers are classified into some category, and then you have done some analysis also. And out of this analysis, you found something that that is not yet addressed. So this is very essential here in this literature review section. I think research gaps I told you about, and research contribution I told you about. These 2 points follows the literature review. After this, we will talk about the methodology section. So this is the third section. So I talked about introduction section, and then actually comes methodology section. If I say abstract is out of the paper, if I don't include the abstract into this paper, then this is the second section. So it may start with the point 2. If the introduction section was given point 1, so this is point 2. And it can have like 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and so on, subsections. So what is a methodology section, or what is the goal of methodology section? So the goal of methodology section is to describe what did you do to get answer to your research question. So methodology is all about the strategy, the approach, the procedure followed by a researcher to get answer to the research question. So now there are different kinds of studies generally people undertake. Maybe empirical study, okay, maybe some kind of experimental study, or some researchers may take up a study in which some kind of computer simulation is done, and so on. So any of these research which you have done with enough findings and well documented methodology can be converted into a good research article. So now after reading methodology section, what is expected? If the reader reads your methodology section, the reader should be able to replicate your research. So you have to configure your methodology section in such a way that anyone can create a duplicate version of your paper. So that is very important here. Some tips are there while you write a methodology section. These are the tips. For example, in your methodology section, there are large questionnaire or lot of equations are there. So instead of including these questionnaire or equations or something like that, you can include in the last one more extra section, which is called appendix section, so that the size of methodology section can be reduced. That is sometimes you can see in most of the research papers. See, outline of methodology section. Professor Amol, are you there? Hello?
Yes, sir, audible.
Is there, no?
Yes, yes.
Okay, we have 19 attendees. Fine. So methodology section, there are certain guidelines here. See, when you start your methodology section, you need to identify some headings. I think I told you about that. You may have main heading, a methodology, then you may have subheading or subheading, like that, where you are talking about the philosophy or the strategy or approach we have used or you have used to answer to the research question. And there is no any format as such. It depends on the research question. Okay. Sometimes you may explicitly write methodology as a section, but in certain papers, you may not see the term or wording methodology or title methodology as such. It may be there in a different way. So that has to be understood, that the methodology section does not mean that you should have a title methodology, but whatever you are going to write there by using some other title should represent approach, strategy, or procedure you have used to solve your research problem. And for that, you need to identify headings, subheadings, which you believe will be more appealing to the readers. And if at all needed, what you can do is you can refer similar journal. I mean, suppose you have identified some XYZ journal, then just check it, how the methodology section is configured. That can help you to configure your methodology section for that journal. Uh, See, while you start writing this section, it is good idea to restate the research question, right? See, you have to restate, you have already stated a research question in introduction section. I told you that somewhere you have introduced the research question, okay, and then you have introduced what you have done, your research work you have mentioned here in the beginning, and then it was literature review gaps, and then what exactly are your contributions. So at one place already you have mentioned about your research question in the introduction section. So while you get into methodology section, you may restate the research question, but do not copy and paste same statement. You have to use another wording uh, to say talk about or to mention the research question. This is optional. See, remember, sometimes you may think that it is good idea to restate the research question, but you may think, or you may take this way also, that okay, there is no reason to reproduce the research question again and again. So this is an optional. Next, description of research design. So as I said, the entire philosophy or approach, strategy, that design whatever you have chosen, research design, has to be stated here. Also, you have to mention about the justification. I mean, you have to justify the strategy, like why this is the best strategy for this research question. So that justification has also to be given here. And if there are any limitations of the strategy, then you can always mention. So these are some of the important points you need to note while you construct your methodology section. So let me summarize, like stating research question, defining the research design, then giving justification as to why this approach is more relevant, and finally, what are the limitations of your approach. These things you have to keep in mind while you construct the methodology section. So I think I told you. Now these 4 points are elaborated here, that restate, reword the problem, okay, and connect it with literatures. See, while you restate the question, you have to connect it with the literature and then methodology. Okay. So anyway, as I said, this is an optional component. You may skip even, like, unless you believe it is necessary. But the other components that you have to properly design, because the methodology is heart of your research paper. If you fail to convince the reader about what methodology you have used, probably you may lose the paper. Your reviewer may reject the paper if the reviewer knows that methodology is not properly stated, or methodology is so weakly stated that this methodology cannot be a novel methodology, something like that. So if you don't bother about writing methodology properly, then there are chances that your paper may get rejected. Clearly explain the process of whatever data gathering, analyzing, and all those things. As I already told you, that you have to describe the methodology in such a manner that anybody can duplicate this methodology. Anybody can go to the laboratory and reproduce your results. Okay, that you have to, it should be detailed enough. Another scholar should be able to apply and work on it. That is what. And reader should recreate your experiment in the laboratory. So these things you have to keep in the mind while you prepare your methodology section. Okay. Also, as I said, you need to give a justification as to why this methodology is most suitable or is better compared to the other methodologies proposed by the past researchers. So that justification has to be given. Discuss the reason as to why you believe the chosen methodology will yield the best results. So that has to be written here. Connect your methodology with a literature review. See, your methodology should have roots in a scholarly journals. So you must cite some suitable papers from where you have taken the methodology, or there is connection of your methodology with certain literatures. Those literatures should be cited here. Fine. And I told you, you have to convince as to why this research methodology. So need to convince why you have chosen this methodology and how it is thoughtfully chosen, and it is a tailored response. Okay, so you have not randomly picked up some methodology and applied, but it is thoughtfully taken, and it is a tailored response. I mean, you have, although these similar methodologies exist somewhere in the literature, but slightly modification in that approach is done to suit your research. So there are a number of ways you can configure the justification component of the research design, research strategy chosen. But you have to justify, otherwise you may receive some arguments from the reviewer that there is no proper justification why this methodology chosen, why other methodology, because reviewer asks any question and you don't have any challenge to argue the reviewer. And never argue to the reviewer, I'll tell you later on. If you argue to the reviewer, you may lose your paper. I told you that let us be honest upfront. Okay, that will show to the reviewer that we are talking about something and that something still has some limitations. Okay, you are not talking about something very ideal, and generally they will not accept it also, because every methodology always has got some kind of limitation, and better to state it. But we should be smart also, that there are no, I mean, you should be able to convince, no regret about the limitation, and you should be able to justify why this limitation is not going to affect the accuracy level of the results. See, we are playing a game here. We are stating the limitations, and at the same time we are saying that this limitation doesn't make much difference. So that is a kind of diplomatic statement you have to frame, or a paragraph you need to frame to show to the reviewer that you are honest, yet your limitation has no meaning, or it doesn't make much difference. So this is to be mentioned if at all relevant, because I'm writing this, I'm explaining, or I'm giving the talk about writing research paper in a general way, in the sense, in some of the research paper, there is no need to unnecessarily become very honest if there is no any significant limitation. Fine. So I have done with methodology section so far. So we finished two sections here. The first one is introduction, and then second one was a methodology section. So the next section is about result section now. So result and discussion. Professor Amol, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Some noise here outside. I don't know if whether my microphone is capturing that noise.
Oh, no, no noise right now.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Okay, so I was talking to you about result and discussion section. So first I will talk about result section, and then subsequently I will talk about discussion section. But remember, result and discussion sections are generally in a single, I mean, there are papers where result and discussion sections might not be different. And there may be a single section with the name result and discussion. So in that case, you may have first paragraph about result section and the second paragraph about discussion section. So about result section, there are a few points we need to remember. The goal of result section is to describe the results without interpreting them. So there is no interpretation needed at this stage. You are just going to state the results. Okay. It is said that you may like to use past tense, but not necessarily. And these results should not be interpreted. Again, there are few decisions to be taken while you start writing your result section. So maybe your research can be better explained by using some graphs, for example. Then better you should use graphs. But if you believe that your result can be better explained by using tables, okay, then avoid graphs and better use tables to communicate the results. Okay. Uh, Provide supporting data references. Sometimes, see, it is very essential that you may have taken some data from other journals. So you have to mention about those journals here from where some data is taken up. You may have result, but you have used some data from other journals. So citation is very important. Otherwise, what happens is reviewer may accept it, but give a major revision like the data, I mean, the reference is not mentioned and something like that. So unnecessarily, we have to add all these things in the second version of our paper. Or sometimes even we may, invite rejections because we did not write article properly by not giving uh, the name of article from where the data was taken. So that has to be uh, kept in the mind. Uh, Use subsections, heading, and on something like that. So while you write the result section, you may have a single heading, then subsection, subheading, and so on. So you identify all those main headings and subheadings. Point here is that don't give table and figure both, because otherwise it will increase the size of your paper, and that is also not good, that you are duplicating same story, repeating same story in the form of graph and tables. One suggestion here is that whenever you use either figure or table, you need to ensure that the figures and tables have a caption. Many times we forget to give a caption, and that may create a problem. And what you have to do is all these figures and tables which you mention in your result section must be mentioned in the paragraph. That means you may have like table number 1 shows so and so, or figure number 1 shows so and so. That is how the tables and figures must be cited and discussed in the main body of your paper. So many a times I have seen amateur researchers, particularly my master's students, they generally don't cite table and figure, and then they take it granted for that reader will understand what I meant, but it never happens actually. So therefore, you need to remember this. Again here, I think I already told you that you need to choose or identify main headings. See, this is good strategy. While you write a result section, have a main heading followed by short paragraph, and then subheading followed by detailed paragraph. And you must have seen this particular approach in all the papers you have been reading. And you may like to follow similar strategy while you write your research paper. While you prepare a result section, there are certain guidelines here. For example, before you start writing about your result section, you may need to do some processing work, pre-processing work in the beginning, okay, which you believe is important. And you may be required to combine some variables, some transformation of data, some pre-processing may be required in the result section to be done in the beginning. You may mention about some missing data which you have used, which is not referred in the past literature, something like that. So this pre-processing may be good idea to be included under main heading maybe, or even before main heading starts, immediately after result section. So that is one thing. That depends on the kind of research, of course. It is a general advice. Then few more points here. What are your main studies that you have to now mention? In what way? There are 3 points given. What is, see here, while you start writing your result section, you may restate your research question, not necessarily, because you already restated question at two occasions. Maybe here, while you started writing methodology section, you stated your research question. In introduction also, you have stated your research question. So third time, you may include a research question once again here. But remember, no copy paste. You have to use another type of wording to recreate or rewrite the research question using 1 or 2 lines, or whatever hypothesis you started with, that hypothesis you may reproduce here. But this is an optional step again. And then you can start writing about what is your result. I said already that whether it's graphical and all. Avoid interpretation of the findings. So no interpretation is expected while you prepare a result section of your paper. So hope this makes sense to you. I think I already told you about first paragraph, second paragraph, and all those things. Now, finally, we have to, not finally, this is last but one section, and that is a discussion section. As I said, you may have a result and discussion section together, where first paragraph is a result section and second paragraph is about discussion section. Or you may explicitly say result section is separate and discussion is section is separate. No one will bother you. It is, choice is yours eventually. So the goal of the discussion section is show that you have a convincing and valuable answer. See, discussion section should have statements, and these statements should convince the readers, and they should justify that your results are very valuable to the research community. Okay, so this is to be okay. So now discussion section can be configured by considering these almost eight guidelines. I have found some 8 headings, but remember, explicitly you should not write these headings in your paper. They are implicitly to be considered. Okay, explicitly you should not say summary, interpretation, integration, or implication, or limitation, conclusion, nothing like that. These are just guidelines to help researcher to prepare a discussion section. See, the first paragraph or first 2 lines can again summarize what is done so far or written so far. Okay. In fact, you are restating your research question, methodology, and results using 2 to 3 lines in the discussion section. That may be the case. Then, after having written 1 paragraph or summary of what has been done so far, the next paragraph could be interpretation of your result. So you are going to interpret your own result. That means what is the meaning of your result? What is the significance of your result has to be written here. There may be many interpretations. So you have to include all the different interpretations of your result. Then justify. Okay, justify how does your research fits into the existing research. In that case, you may like to compare. So compare with the past researches, past theories, past articles, and then you have to convince that why your result is or why your research is very valuable. That represents integration component. Okay. Implications. Implication refers to what is its importance, how important it is, how, in the sense that is there any potential application of your research, maybe industry application, or maybe it can help other researchers or other how it can help other kind of research which is going on, something like that. So the implications of your research should come in the third part while you write a discussion section. Fourth, you have to include the limitations, if any, of your research work. See, again, I mentioned this while you stated your methodology section. Here also, you have to mention about the limitations of your research work. Is there any weakness or weak part? What is the weak part in your research work? That should be convincing again. I already told you, you should be honest upfront, and therefore you are stating the limitation. But at the same time, you should be smart enough to convince to the readers that the limitation doesn't make much difference. Still, your research is valuable and convincing. That has to be stated here. And while you finish your conclusion section, you may add 2-3 lines about the conclusion way of your result. You may conclude something about your research findings. So these are some of the points you need to remember while you construct your discussion section. There are certain guidelines how you prepare a discussion section in the following slides. 2-3 slides I have where I'll be talking about uh, how to configure your discussion section. For example, first paragraph is the goal is to summarize your article again up to this point, and then you can have statements like this: in the present article we investigated so and so, our study addressed so and so, our goal was so and so, the result showed that. This is all you can include in the first paragraph. The next paragraph is interpretation. I already told you what did you add to the existing body of the knowledge. So you can have this kind of statements in the discussion sections, like there are 3 possible explanations about the result, one possible explanation or another possible, our findings are conflicting with some other findings, something like that, our findings converges with the previous findings. So these are possible ways that you can use in order to construct the second paragraph of the discussion section. Implications, already I told you what are the implications. So possible future effects to be highlighted, that represents the implication section of your discussion section. So our findings offer novel perspective, our findings resolve the conflict, and our findings point towards new approach. So these are the statements you can use while you write implication part of the discussion section. Limitations, I already told you that you have to include the limitations. So in the first part you can include the limitation that our study has main 2 limitations, most important limitation is like this, another limitation is like this. So goal is to state the limitation in the limitation section of the discussion part. And in the second part you should be very smart, okay, to qualify these limitations after you admit the limitations, right? So see, these statements are starting with although. That means although there are alternative applications so and so, although our findings allow so and so, Although, so I mean to say that you are accepting that you have got limitations of research, but at the same time you are stating that these limitations are not making much difference, or there is no any loss of accuracy, and still the research is contributing to the existing body of knowledge. That is how you have to qualify your limitations as well. Now I'm coming to the last section of my presentation here, which is generally a summary, conclusion, future scopes, like that. So you are going to summarize here, and this conclusion section may start with these kind of statements, like in the present article we investigated the result of two studies suggested that, taken together this offers a novel perspective. Future scope, your future research may extend this work by so and so. So that is how a conclusion section can be written. However, I will give you a best idea to prepare your conclusion. What you can do is you just summarize these four sections in the conclusion section and use these kind of sentences. For example, just hold on, I have some Professor Amol. Sir Amol,
Yes,
are you
sir.
there? Just give
Yes,
me a
yes.
minute. I have one call to be attended.
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so I was referring to conclusion and future scope section, that is the last section. And I generally suggest that best strategy is to summarize all the sections while you configure your conclusion section. For example, you have already written an introduction section where in that introduction section, you have used almost four subsections like research motivation, then literature review, then research gaps and your contribution, like that. So what you have to do here is you summarize those four sections using some 3 to 4 lines. So these 3 to 4 lines representing summary of introduction section should constitute the first paragraph of conclusion section. Then your methodology section should be summarized using some another 3 to 4 lines. Then result section also you can summarize using 3 to 4 lines, and discussion section can be summarized using 3 to 4 lines, and then summarize all these summarized lines at the end. That is how you can configure your conclusion section. And again, reframe the sentences if you believe there is a proper there is no proper flow of information in that case. So that is how you can always configure your conclusion section. And you need to add one paragraph mentioning what is the future scope, I mean what the future researchers can do based on your findings. Okay, some open-ended questions you need to state in the later part of your conclusion section, and your reviewer will like, or your editor will be very happy if you are mentioning some open-ended questions to motivate the other researchers. So that is how one can configure this conclusion section. There are a few more things generally we have to include if necessary in our research article. These are you may have acknowledgement section that institute and someone has contributed, so you can take the name of that person whom you have not included or given authorship, but you have to give some credit. So that is how you can include them in acknowledgement section. References section, I'll tell you what are the tools, very important. Most of you must be knowing if you have done your research paperwork sometimes during your MTech studies or you're doing during doctorate studies. So that may be a repetition for you. Appendix section is an optional, as I said. If you have some content in your paper which you believe should be included for readers, but it is not relevant directly as a research work, so you can add into the appendix section. So these are some of the main. See, acknowledgement and appendix both are optional, but references, that's a mandatory section. You must have a list of references included, and that can be configured by using a Mendeley Microsoft Words plugin. Actually, it is okay. I have certain suggestions. This is a bold statement. Many of you may not agree, but generally I don't like latex. It is high quality typesetting system. If you have a good command, use it. That's great. But unnecessarily don't waste time learning latex and then using it for writing paper. Of course, maybe you can use latex to configure or prepare your dissertation, I mean master thesis or maybe PhD thesis. That's different story. But if it is a research paper to be configured, do not learn latex. Just use Microsoft Words with a Mendeley as a plugin, and that's enough. So this is some suggestion. It's fine. I think this is some guidelines about review paper and all. Professor Amol, actually I have done presentation, but I have few things like mentioning about Mendeley. Okay, the spelling, just check
Yes.
Mendeley. And then I don't know, advanced Google search engine, actually Scholar search engine, your students might be using. That is also I wanted to demonstrate, that I will demonstrate online. Okay. And
Okay.
okay, I think how much time still I have?
We have 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, fine. So I'll just quickly take you through some of the this tools, and then we will have some question answer session also, right?
Yes, sir.
So I think you mentioned in your information leaflet about conference and journals, right? So conference, I think MTech first year students might not be knowing, but second year students and doctorate candidates are well aware of what is conference and all those things. But let me just mention about conference. Conferences are some kind of events generally organized by some institutions, organizations, and they are organized to give platform to the researchers, and that represents quick dissemination of knowledge. I mean, someone has done small research and want to quickly present to someone, then conference can be a great tool. And conferences, as I said, have a standard dates, important dates like last date, and then date on which you will be communicated whether your paper is accepted or not, something like that. So conference generally are events where small researches can be communicated. That is one thing. In certain engineering institutions, it is mandatory for master students that at least one or two conference paper must be there, or even for doctorate candidates, it is mandatory that he or she should have one or two conference papers in a credit, like that. So again, conferences are organized by institutions, as I said, and there are two types of conferences. One, it's a national conference and international conference, like that. So if all the participants in this meeting are from electrical engineering fraternity, I mean electrical, electronics, computer science, instrumentation, then I strongly encourage all the participants to only believe in IEEE conference and not any other Tom and Jerry conference. Okay, because IEEE conferences are bit better than other conferences. IEEE conference charges around 4,000, 5,000 as a registration fee. And in that case, if you're IEEE student member, just check if you have that membership, then you can save some amount as far as registration fee is concerned. So that is about conference paper. But if you want that your research should get more recognition, then journal, international journal is the best option. So international journal is something where you have to submit your result or say research work and your research work will be, you know, reviewed by a team of reviewers, and it may take 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, or 6 months, even like. And after this reasonable period, you will receive email from the journal editor, editor of a journal, that whether your paper is accepted, rejected, or whether it requires any major, minor revision. So it undergoes some iterations. Maybe you have to revise your article, you resubmit, again it undergoes a review process. And sometimes journal may take minimum 2 to 3 months to even 1 year. And master students have got a stipulated time period available. So it may happen sometimes that a master student has, defended the examination, and after 6 months, the paper is accepted in the journal. So this may also happen, but I encourage master students, even BTech students. I encourage, and I will show you. I have one of the paper recently accepted, which my BTech people configured, and it is accepted. And I have something more to show you and to set some motivation for you. But before I get you to those pages, I want to give you a list of publishers. So you can take a screenshot of this, that these are the good publishers, uh, and they have got many journals, and you have to submit your article in the journals affiliated to these publishers only. For example, if you are from electrical engineering fraternity, then for you IEEE is there, then elsewhere is there, Springer is there, Taylor Francis is there, Wiley is there. This is for mechanical engineering people, this is for civil engineering people, this is for mechanical and automobile engineering people. Again, these are some of the general, even like sales publication, Emerald. These are in general for all. I mean, these journals are for all kind of researchers. Let me put a bracket here. This four publishers, they publish findings of all type of researchers like medical, pharmacy, engineering, and whatnot. So for you people, you just limit your submission into the journal which is affiliated to one of these five publishers. Okay, so this is one point. And the secondly, actually, I wanted to show you. Um, just let me open. See, there are certain research papers I submitted, and let me open any paper very quickly. Okay, so this is one of the paper we recently submitted. Professor Amol, can you see?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
You people will wonder that I am working with one of the student of Walchand College only currently. And jointly we were working, and we have submitted a paper. It is under, one paper is almost accepted. I'll show you. And 4 more paper are under review. And all these papers we have jointly submitted to the journals affiliated to these publishers only. So the BTech people can also work and submit finding into the good journals. And I actually wanted to show you this tab references. Okay. See, what I want is you just download this plugin. You can see Open Mendeley. Professor Amol, can you see this Open Mendeley?
Yes, sir.
So I will not demonstrate how to download and install and all those things. For that, I encourage all participants to check the YouTube videos with the keywords like how to use Mendeley, Mendeley for citations. I'll just demonstrate you how it is done generally. For example, you can see some papers are cited here. So here, this is one paper cited, this is second and third. Suppose I have to cite a paper here. So all that I have to do is I have to take my cursor here. You can see some cursor is blinking, and insert a citation. So if I insert a citation, I'll have some library, my own Mendeley library. It will open. It will take some 30 seconds. Okay. So you can see here my own Mendeley library. See, you will get this Mendeley library once you install this Mendeley desktop. So this is my library. It contains several papers of my area. So whenever a paper in my area is published by someone, I immediately download and I put in this my library. So this is my e-library, you can say. Now let's say I have to cite one paper and I know the title of that paper, and title is, for example, something economic, like that. This is the paper I want to cite. Okay, so I have to pick up it and I'll just say okay, and you will see that automatically that paper will enter here. Just wait. Just wait, it is taking some time, but anyway, it will show you. So let it do it on its own, and I'll come back to that point later on. Meanwhile, uh, see, I was talking to you. Professor Amol, can you see a dashboard of one of the journal?
Yes, sir.
It's a
Journal of
uh,
Institution of Engineers.
so this is a series B. This journal is published by Springer. Okay. Earlier it was published in India, but now the rights are transferred to the Springer Nature, Germany. And you can see this paper was submitted sometimes on 24th April 2021. This is the research work by one of our BTech student. I can just view the submission. This paper, let me download here. And now the status is it is accepted. So the final decision came on 13 January 2022, and paper is accepted. Now this paper is in a press, it is typed. So maybe after a week, it will be online. It will be available on Google Scholar. That is one thing. And Manisha and myself has a paper in this journal, which is accepted, and it is also under process. Okay. Then think this is one. Yeah, this is another paper by the Walchand College student BTech only. We submitted on 5th February. You can see here, and it is with editor right now. So it will go in a review process. What I'm showing, if you are new to this kind of dashboard, particularly those MTech first year people, they should know this kind of dashboard you will come across while you submit paper. This is a journal, which is this journal Applied Soft Computing. This journal is affiliated to elsewhere, and we submitted paper on 5th February, and it is with editor right now. So the editor of the journal is going through our paper, and if the editor finds it useful, then it will go to review process, and you will see the flag will change to review, like that. And after another period of 2 or 3 months, the flag may change to revision, rejection, or acceptance. So the paper I was talking about, you can see here, this is a paper of a BTech student. You can see here. Yeah. So this Tejasri Patil is a BTech student, and she got her paper finally accepted. So I motivate all MTech people that even if you are in first year, you should start working on some kind of a research article, and maybe you may use MATLAB programming or maybe Simulink to solve your research problem, and you can prepare good article and communicate to the these things. Moreover, just to set some motivation, what happens is, once we have good number of articles in our credit, then what happens is you build your credentials this way on a scholar page. So these are some of my credentials, and you are known by these numbers, that how much is the H index of that author. So my H index is the 13th. I believe it is the highest H index in a Shivaji University area so far, considering all branches of engineering. And I-10 index is also 18, which is again highest among the engineering fraternity in a Shivaji University area. And total citations have reached to the 810. So these kind of citations can help you even if you are a beginner and looking for some job in a research industry or research and development field in good core sector company. Then your research aptitude is very important. You have done suppose MTech second year, and at least one or two papers if you have in your credit, probably you can claim in your as a credential, as a strong credential, and that can attract the employers, as far as the core sector jobs in good R&D sectors are concerned. So these are some of the things. Moreover, very quickly, let me take you through, because you are in this beginners, first year people particularly, you will be doing a literature review. I encourage you to use a Google Scholar with this advanced search engine field. In advanced search engine field, you have to submit all these things. I mean, see, the beauty of this Google Scholar is you can search the articles by title, and you can put here the name of good publishers. I told you, you have to limit your search with respect to these 4 to 5 publishers, that is IEEE Transactions, Elsewhere, Springer, Wiley, and Taylor and Francis. So you can just do the literature review within 1 hour with this very good tool provided by Google Scholar. So these are some of the tools I mentioned. I gave you idea about Mendeley as a citation tool. Use this very commonly used advanced search engine of Google Scholar, and that's all about. I suppose, Professor Amol, I have done with my presentation. And if at all some people have some questions, let's have a discussion, compliments, arguments.
Okay, sir. So I request students to put their questions there. Feel free to ask the questions. Yes, anyone, you can unmute by yourself and you can ask.
Let it be a silly question, though, no worries.
Yes.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you for the wonderful session, sir. Sir, I wanted to ask, is there any word limit for the paper or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. Maybe I can take you to any journal. For example, I was just referring to Applied Soft Computing Journal. Okay. So here, when you reach to this, login page, there is a field called Submit Your Paper. Just hit to that, and you will come across a dashboard. Okay, let me log out it first. Okay, you will be navigated to this page. Okay, now instructions for the author. You just click here, and if at all any limitations are there about pages and words. Now let me search, for example, Control F, pages. Now can you see type of paper here written?
Yes, sir.
Authors are invited to submit a technical paper 20 to 30 pages, or at the most 50 pages. So this particular journal, what is the name of this journal? Say Journal of Applied Soft Computing. So this journal has set a limitation of max 50 pages. Okay. So this is the case with this journal. But if you go to some other journal, in that case, you will notice that they are saying 8,000 words, 10,000 words, 15,000 words. Some people or some journal talk about words, number of words. Some journals talk about number of pages. So you have to check this also, that how many maximum number of pages are there. But believe me, if your paper size is less than 10 pages, then it creates a wrong impression among the reviewer or rather editor that there is no enough quantity of research work done. So always try to have a sufficient research work done, and your research article must contains more than 10 pages, unless you believe that 5 pages are sufficient to communicate the research work, which is very novel. I think I answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir.
Hi, yes.
Sir, I wanted to ask you that how much maximum plagiarism is allowed while publishing the paper?
Yeah, very good question, actually. I have counter question here. Like, suppose, what's your name?
Sir, my name is Shreyas.
Shreyas, suppose if you have written a paper
Okay.
with 10 pages, okay?
Okay.
And your 9 pages are your original pages. 9 pages are original. Or instead of 10, I would say you have a paper which contains 100 pages, 100. And out of 100, 99 pages are yours. I mean, no single line is copied and pasted. But entire one page with 20 lines are copied and pasted. Now your plagiarism checker will show 1%. Are you agree? We are talking on 100 scale, right?
Yes.
So 99% your original, but 1% copy paste. But how it sounds? Entire one page, 20 lines are copied and pasted. So here, one page entirely copied and pasted will send a wrong message, right? So percent has little meaning. What matters here is that, of course, 10%, 15%, number wise, it's okay. Max 10%, 15% is fine. Generally, they expect 10 to 15%. But you have to make sure that there is no single sentence is entirely copied and pasted from some source. That you have to make sure. Half of the sentence might be copied and pasted from somewhere, or it may be coincidence, mere coincidence that your half sentence, exactly matches with somebody's sentence. However, entire sentence should not coincide. I think you got the point, right?
Yes, sir. Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, I think, is there any person?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir. I want to add with that question only. Is it like the plagiarism content limit is varying from journal to journal, or it is same for all journals?
No. See, if you visit to the website of journal, you will never find, they will never give you any idea about how much plagiarism or something like that. Okay, no one will mention about percentage. So there is no such a concept exist. However, we have to make sure that every line is written by us. So let me tell you, while we start writing our research paper, what we should do is we should frame our own sentence. See, I submit at least one paper within a period of 6 months. I take help of students like you only. I just tap students. I train them, and then I get the result and I start writing a paper. Okay, every day I write some 4 5 lines. Sometimes it may take 1 month for me to 1 or 2 months for me to complete a complete paper. Believe me, I never check for plagiarism because every line I drafted. So there is no point in checking plagiarism. And I never received any reply from the editor that you have a plagiarism of this much and that much, and therefore we are rejecting. Nothing, never. So my suggestion to all these researchers is to write every line on your own, and then you don't need any plagiarism as such. I think I answered you, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, anyone from second year?
And I already told you, I have one student from BTech Electrical Engineering, and we have written 4 papers, and these papers are under review, and one is accepted. And I have one student from Mechanical Engineering only, Walchand Engineering College. Mr. Mayank is there, his name. He also started working with me when he was in a 3rd year mechanical engineering. So I was mentoring. I have not seen these people actually. I mean, we never met. It's all going on telephone only. mobile phone. Mayank has submitted. I mean, Mayank also prepared very good article. It was about mechanical engineering, optimization, and all those things. I prepared few paragraphs only, and we jointly submitted. And that paper is also accepted in one of the journal, and that is affiliated to American Society of Mechanical Engineering. I told you this particular. So BTech mechanical guy of Walch Engineering College has also one paper in his credit now in a good journal. So if these guys can write article despite huge schedule, a busy schedule, then our MTech people from Walchenshu College must have at least one paper in their credit before you leave the campus. And you cannot afford to have zero paper in your credit while you get or while you leave this campus. And it may so happen that we may get mentoring, we may not get mentoring, but there are so many good mentors available on YouTube. You have to use that resource, you have to exploit that resource available on YouTube as to how to write research paper, how to work on certain XYZ assignment and whatnot. And all that you need is a strong desire to do some simple research where your laptop is sufficient. You don't have to do anything in your laboratory. You don't need higher end instrumentation cards, nothing like that. Just your simulation, MATLAB, Simulink, that should help you to solve your research question, and those findings you should be able to communicate by writing abstract and whatnot I just said to you. I think Professor Amol I have done probably.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. So I hope students get a clear idea about how to write the research article and about the different conferences and journals. Okay. So, sir, I would like to express a very sincere thanks to you because, first of all, you have accepted the invitation and make a very wonderful journey of how to write a paper right from the abstract to the conclusion, and also introducing the different tools so that the research content can be drafted very well, and also demonstrated uh, some tools in a virtual mode, and also exploring us to the various journals so that students can visit and submit the journals there. And I'm very happy that some of the students from this WC are working with you, and I assure that students will definitely take an inspiration and will definitely write a paper uh, in their fields. So I thank you to you, sir.
Thank you Professor.
Yes. And I also express a thanks to the students for joining and actively participating and involving them in this today's session.
Okay,
Okay, so with this, sir, okay, sir.
thank
I would like to conclude that this session is over. Thank you all.
you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.